record.
This meeting is being recorded.
Cool.
So
Now
thank you.
you're being recorded, so be careful what you say because Amazon is going to take it and you're going to buy some shit.
So welcome everybody. This is a great session we have today. Trevor, Imran, and Kader are going to talk about the book that they wrote. This is actually their 1-year anniversary of that book. So, and at the end of this, their presentation, Trevor is going to help raffle 3 books to the participants as well. So thank you for that. Just like Jay said, I read the book. It's actually a very good, inspiring book. The whole concept of how, I don't want to, go into the details. They are going to do the presentation, but I really love the focus away from process and tools into the people and spirit is what the secret sauce. So we definitely want to hear more about it. So let me introduce the 3 speakers. Kader couldn't join us because he's in a board meeting. Trevor here, I didn't realize, Trevor, that you work for Cartus. I thought you were, working on writing the book. So I just looked you up today and you're like, oh. So Imran and Trevor and I work for the same corporation, Anywhere. And Trevor is a marketing whiz. He's also a great communicator. He, if you want anything to be put together in a message, he's the guy. So that's Trevor, and he's a co-author for this book. Imran, probably we know each other very well. We actually know each other, others' teams as well, and our team strengths and weaknesses and who are the good people. And he even tried to poach one of my good people. So so that's how close we are. So Imran is a great leader, amazing leader. He runs a huge engineering organization that delivers like hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of revenue for the enterprise. And it's not an easy job, and he does it with a smile on his face. Every time I'm in a meeting with him, his attitude and the smile on his face always is an inspiration for all of us. And finally, Kader, I did not get a chance to work with Kader. He left the corporation Anywhere before I joined, but from what I hear, he made a huge change to the business unit that he was in charge of before he left in terms of the transformation. And I see that on LinkedIn, he has won like the top 10 CTO awards, top 100 CIO awards and all that. And we definitely want to, hear from him as well. So without much further ado, Trevor, Imran, and Kader, please take it away. Thank you for spending time with us here.
Yeah, thank you, Gopal. That's the best possibly, and I think only introduction I've ever gotten as well. So I very much appreciate it. I know Imran does as well. We're hopeful Kader will be jumping in at some point this evening to share his wealth of wisdom as well, but we'll do our best to represent him in his absence in the meantime. So, we got a short deck to go through because similar to the vibe of the book itself, this is not about, as you may see in the chat, not about prescriptions. It's not about teaching you one way to build a car or a website or go through a digital transformation. We kind of backed into the secret sauce, as I think Gopal accurately described it, during the writing journey. And hopefully that will be of interest and also use as we dive into that. But you can see 2 of the keywords right on this cover slide here, Josh and chaos. And if you're not familiar with the former or the strategic application of the latter, you hopefully will be by the end of the night. And so just a reiteration of who we are. promise not to spend too much time on this slide, but I think it's a little instructive how I found myself sandwiched between these two tech leaders when, really I'm a words guy, and minus a few WYSIWYG programs like Canva or Wix, you're not going to find me in assembler language, Ron, other than a vague notion of what it is, thanks to my dad's background. But Imran, it might be instructive just to say how we got to a point where a year later, we're talking about a book that came out a year ago.
Yeah. First of all, Trevor, we admire your involvement in this book, and what you have brought to the book is amazing for us, for me and Kader both. It's been a 1 year for the book. We started this journey, or I and Kader and Trevor started this journey almost 2.5 years back. It took us a lot of time to kind of bring those ideas into a small book. Our intent from beginning was to provide our experiences and our knowledge so far collected. I somehow call myself young, though I'm not, to bring it to audience who's looking for some inspiration around how do you transform different organizations. So that's where we started. And Gopal already talked about me and my journey of engineering. I'm by heart and a coder. Always like to be a coding. World is changing very fast. Ron, you said what Manage is gonna do a few minutes ago. That's what now I'm doing, mostly supporting, helping engineers to do a right thing. But again, thank you for inviting us, and I'm very excited to be here.
It is not a long formal agenda, and the idea with the book, as Imran said, it is literally, and as Jay has joked but not joked, you can read it on a short-ish flight, but the idea was to have a book that, while you could consume it in just a couple of, rather intensive hours of reading or fewer, the ideas would hopefully stick with you and expand for, the weeks, months, and years required to implement them or build upon them in your own unique way. So we'll take you through a couple of the big picture perspectives that really resonated with us on this journey. And then we do have, rather unique microcosms to share as well. As Imran said, he and Kader come from the tech world, your worlds specifically. I run a marketing department that's part of a subsidiary of a large Fortune 500 company. And so we had very differing experiences and points of view to bring to the table, but they married well together in ways that actually were kind of unexpected along the way. So why don't we jump right into that with the first word on the book, the word that appears rather regularly throughout, just this concept of chaos, and the idea that the reality is chaos is the rule and not the exception. So I think a very easy way to illustrate that is the fact that as Imran, Kader, and I were starting to write this book about transformation, and it happened to be digital transformation, but if we had written it 150 years ago, it would have been industrial transformation, and if it was 1,000 years ago, it would have been metallurgic transformation. So the fact that it's digital is more pertinent to the age we find ourselves in, but really we're hopeful that some of the principles at least are evergreen and timeless enough to apply to most types of transformations across life and industry. But COVID hit us while we were writing it. We wrote a brand new chapter because of that experience writing pre-pandemic and then mid-pandemic. And who knows if we'll ever get to post-pandemic, despite what you read in the papers. But it kind of inspired this concept that chaos is the water we are always swimming in. That's one of the anecdotes we start the book with, actually a small humorous joke by David Foster Wallace in a graduation speech about two fish swimming in the water, younger fish and an older fish. At one point, the older fish turns to the younger fish and says, "Water's real nice today, isn't it?" A little while later, the younger fish starts to think, "What the heck is water?" Because that's just where he is. And similarly, whether you embrace it or not, the chaos, it could be as large as war or inflation, or as microcosmic as a new company or even team leader joining and shaking things up and everything in between. But chaos is out there, and you can either go against the grain and pretend it's not, or try to harness it for productivity and positivity. And that looks very different between Imran's world of technology and my world of words and pictures, as you might also define marketing.
And then Trevor, I remember we were also not trying to think that this particular concept only attaches to technology, right? I'm a big promoter and believer that technology, or digital rather, is more enabler to organizations, to your personal daily lives, right? We all use technology in a very different way, though somehow transformations and all agile buzzwords are getting connected with technology word only. And I personally believe that technology is just an enabler. Technology gives you a lot of support and expedites a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily, we were not intending to create this understanding that all of this can only apply to technology. We are literally talking about creating more bigger understanding of how you transform anything. And Trevor gave a really good examples. But even in your day-to-day life, I usually use PowerPoint PPT for presentation. I know Trevor talked about he's a Canva guy. Kader probably have a different way to do it. The problem solution is that we want a present, which we have it in our minds, and we all use different tools. And how do we keep that North Star same, but use a different journey to reach to that North Star, right? So that's probably we wanted to define, and to reach to the North Star, there's going to be a lot of chaos from external or internal side of the world, from inflation. Some of the external parameters are here on the deck, but there are a lot of internal. How do you do things? How do you perform certain items? And these are guidelines and rule books, not necessarily this is how exactly you're going to do, and then you will be successful.
Yeah, the book may be the width of a cookbook, but the idea was to make it anything but. There is no step-by-step instructions. This is not baking where if you mix up a tablespoon with a teaspoon, the whole thing blows up in your face. It is truly meant to be a more universal framework that can be applied by most companies, not all. Smaller companies or certain strategies may not be quite as amenable to what we talk about in the book, but for the most part, if you have a few resources and a multi-year plan under your belt, we think there's a lot in here that can help you. And Imran already segued us to one of those key points, this idea of North Star navigation. And I know that sounds a little abstract, but the whole point of having a North Star is to have that fixed point that you can follow no matter how chaotic the world around you is. A world that, don't look at this picture too long because it even makes me dizzy and I'm the one that made the deck, but the North Star, when the world feels like that, you should still be able to look up and see that North Star, because it's not an abstract mission or vision type statement. It's not marketing copy, God forbid, and that's from the marketing guy. From the outside, the North Star may appear to change as, say, you release new products or upgrade certain services or sunset other ones, but internally, the North Star should be something that everyone in the company knows, resonates with, sees on a daily basis, trues up to in their day-to-day job. And the idea that it's always there, even if it's cloudy. The North Star, of course, is there. You may not be able to see it at times, but if you've triangulated it enough on the sunny days, then on the cloudy ones, it should still be easy to find. So, as an example of that, the company that Imran and I still work for and that Kader previously worked for had a North Star during its digital transformation journey, which you might roughly paraphrase as creating a smarter, more intuitive, and more customer-centric digital experience across all its products and services. And this was and is a company in a very service and people-centric industry. And so technology was always deemed secondary or tertiary, or I don't know what's below tertiary, quaternary maybe, but the idea that the technology was not necessary to the positive employee experience, because we would just work harder and our consultants would be nicer and we would just push more volume through the door with the same manual processes that had always accommodated it. And the reality is that we were not keeping up, but the industry was not keeping up. And so we did not have a clearly defined North Star to follow when things started to get a little shaky. And, cue regime change, new CEO, new CIO/CTO, Imran and Kader come on board. And I think I'll close this little monologue just by pointing out something that I only appreciated recently, but if you joined early enough to hear Gopal mention, our parent company recently rebranded as Anywhere Real Estate. And that word anywhere is key. I've heard them answer the question, oh, why didn't you change your name to Everywhere Real Estate? And the CEO responded in a way I really resonated with. His point was that you can't plan for everything. You can't have the step-by-step cookbook, bug out bag, whatever it is, for every possible scenario. Pandemic, swarm of killer bees, flood, fire, whatever it is. You can't plan for everything. But if you have these big picture concepts and frameworks in place and some basic muscle memory on how to apply them and scale them and adapt to them, agility, in other words, then you can be ready for anything. You can be ready for business that happens anywhere in their case. And so even though they hadn't rebranded as of the time we created this book, the Anywhere brand now and the concept of being ready for anything, I think that actually works really well for this idea that we're trying to make a little more universal than that cookbook style approach that is also very useful if you're just someone that wants to bang out the steps and you're very competent at following directions, like putting together a Lego Death Star. You get a beautiful Death Star at the end of it, but you also didn't do anything unique necessarily. Imran, I don't know if you have more thoughts.
And the other thing on a North Star, Trevor and team, I personally also feel that you need to sell that North Star. If you are on a more executive side of the house, you are kind of selling that North Star, and everyone needs to adopt to that, right? I have in my lifetime, I've seen that North Star never changes, but the journey to North Star keep changing, right? You need to constantly keep adopting different tactics, right? You might have to adjust your strategy and things like that, but everyone in your organization, or even if you are defining a North Star for your personal life, everyone who's involved need to kind of attach to that North Star. That's what our goal is. And I think, Trevor, you said it very well, where there are days when it will be very hazy and you won't really see the North Star, but you need to believe that it is there and that's you are following. And journey might be bumpy, but eventually you'll get it. Some of the known organizations we know today who are very successful, they were successful sometimes it's only because their North Star is very short and simple, and they believed in it from day one they started their journey. So I do believe it needs to be that simple, and it needs to be where everyone is attached to it, for sure.
And by the way, it may seem tough to jump in during my monologuing in particular, but whether or not you have questions, you're definitely feel free to throw up the digital or physical hand along the way. We're very loose tonight, so happy to jump in midstream, or at the end we can carve out time for that as well. So you will not be interrupting anything important, we promise you. So this next part is the closest that we're going to veer toward anything resembling prescription.
Hey, Trevor,
Yes.
I think there is one in the chat.
Oh, great call. Let me pull that
Want
up.
me to read it out to you?
Yeah, you know what? I got too many screens going, but not enough with the chat in them.
Okay. Michael, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, or do you want me to read it? Okay. What Michael is asking is, thinking on when chaos is the rule, does it cease to become chaos? He was just thinking out loud.
I like that. I think as a principle, because no chaos is created equal, the fact is that every unique flavor of chaos is chaotic in its own way. So kind of playing off of that idea of you can't be ready for everything, but you can be ready for anything. You can't be ready for all the flavors of chaos that you're going to get in the the rainbow pack of popsicles. I'm winging this metaphor, but bear with me. But the fact is that just having that baseline agility, both mentally and across your company at an enterprise level, and setting your employees up with that mindset early and often. I think, going back to that first slide, just that first blush pass, I literally wrote that in a few seconds of all the chaos that was front and center in my mind these days. And that doesn't even include like the personal things, family and friends and parents and day jobs and all the rest. So I think the fact is that there's so much chaos out there, but it's so unique. There's a bigger danger of something like, say burnout or depression, if we want to get deep and dark for a minute. But in terms of, a business strategy, I do think the fact that the no chaos is the same does mean that each one brings its twist that you then have to account for, besides just the fact of the matter. So you're right that the water metaphor doesn't quite hold, because for the most part, water is water, and the scuba gear will work wherever you bring it. But chaos is not quite the same, at least in our minds, I think. But Imran, maybe you have a different take.
Not different take, but I think chaos definitely do 2-3 things which I see more creative, if not positive, and I think that's what I like about chaos, right? One, it definitely empowers you to take a quick decision with knowing that, hey, you probably have a little time, you have to take that decision. And that's where the creativity of either engineer or personal person comes in, and it helps you. So it's not same, absolutely, and I completely agree with you, Trevor, but it also empowers you to take quick decisions, empowers you to create a habit of, let me try it. If it's not going to work, I'm going to try something new. And every individuals are different. So I somehow attach to chaos more on a creative side of the house than more of oh my God, what am I going to do about this? And the individual takes it a little differently. But it's a very different question than I would have expected.
Yeah.
Although, so I think to that point, the slide that we're on now actually is relevant in the sense that because whether chaos is the rule or the exception in your life, hey, maybe you've been skating along fine personally and professionally, which power to you if that's the case. The scary thing is in this particular world of digital transformation, and we looked up a lot of different stats to try to triangulate how accurate or melodramatic this one was, but this seems to be the range. It's definitely well over half, but 70% came up a lot in terms of the digital transformations that just end in partial or complete failure. And of course, failure is kind of a big word in that case. And what does that really mean? But whatever their goal was at the beginning of that very expensive and very long journey, they either didn't get there at all, or they only got partway there, which isn't much better. If you have a partway built train track, you still don't get to your destination. So is that really doing you much good? And one of it seems basic, but it was so basic that we were worried that people might underemphasize it. And so we do have a chapter in the book about just this idea of baselining or benchmarking, basically knowing where you are before you even attempt to establish your North Star, because you just have no way to look back and see how far you've come if you don't know where you've been. And so, Imran can speak a little more specific to what that might look like in your worlds, but we're not going to nerd out on it too much. This is just to set the tone to say we're not totally winging it here.
Yeah, no, in all three co-authors, I think I'm known within the group as a person who execute the transformation. Kader here usually as a leader definitely does a lot of vision setup, North Star setup. Trevor helps us, kind of bring that understanding throughout the organization, different part of an organization. How can you engage your employee, and how can you tell the story of where we are going? And I'm known as the guy who execute the transformation. And so this topic definitely puts me in the nerdiness, but the simplicity of this topic is when you start not just the digital transformation, anything, you really want to assess where are you today, and these are some of those tools and artifacts which can help you kind of gather that information, either in the form of each business unit or is in the form of each business capability your organizations are doing. And then once you kind of assess that, you kind of put it on a piece of paper, you need to know that how mature each one is. If it is a business capability, kind of understand each business capability is how mature it is, or how fast you are delivering. And then you define your North Star, and then that you will try different items. That's where the fail fast comes in picture. Nowadays, fail fast is pretty lucid understanding by many, and we all use that particular fail fast as a terminology in a lot of our conversation. But we, as in the leaders of an organization or a promoter of agile, we really need to help people understand that when someone says fail fast, they are allowing you to fail, and that's the only way I know to continue to achieve that at Northstar. Again, you all of you guys can read through the book. There is a whole chapter around the process of transformation, and it's pretty light in my opinion, but we did definitely wanted to make sure that there is a process attached to anything we do, and we attempted to provide those tools and utilities for anyone who's reading this book to kind of resonate that it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen because you think digital transformation is happening. You're gonna need to put that effort, and these are some tools which can help.
And I see a question in the chat from David. So I'll pause on the cover slide here. He asks, when you think chaos, do you think fast entropy or slow entropy? So we're bringing some physics concepts into the discussion. So David, you may have a more technical or specific interpretation of fast or slow entropy. I have a layman's understanding of the concept and also a parent's understanding of a concept. When a clean room that took 1 hour to clean takes 1 minute to destroy by a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. So that's fast entropy. Do you mind giving just a little bit of context if you had a specific angle on that question?
Well, I was just listening to the previous speaker, and I don't know why, it just took me all the way back to Doctor Who when I was a kid, and a character called Davros was ruling the world, and it was talking about entropy, and then that spanned me back to a couple of projects that I had where some are really nice and some are just collapsing because the world around you, right? It's just no one seems to know what you're doing. No one wants to ask. You're trying to tell. No one wants to listen. So to me, that's kind of fast entropy. They're just caving in. And then the slower ones is that you have an ability to work with some of the people, and that helps you kind of build a steady place in a particular area of the company where, as other areas, again, are kind of falling to the side. So I guess in reference to your transformation concepts is, there are steady players. There are areas that want to move forward, are really stable. And then I have a sense there's more areas around that you want to pull into some form of stability, consistency, persistency. So I don't know if any of that made sense, but that word just bounced around my brain as soon as I heard.
No, it definitely made a lot of sense, right? Motion of a slow or fast is difficult to define, right? I mean, it's a relative term. For some people, it is slow, while the person who's more cautious, probably it is faster for that person.
Yeah, definitely a range,
right? But when we are talking about chaos and the speed to it, we are trying to help organizations, especially the transformation I'm in, is to define a business value, right? Mm-hmm. We all know all of our organizations not perfect. The most moneymaker organization to the mom and pop shops organizations also. So when we are defining, creating this tool set is to help you understand business value can come from various locations and parts of an organization. Once you define that, engineers are usually smart to figure it out, right? They know they get excited only because they are a problem solver. Once you define that problem, it is very easy to solve.
You're going back to the North Star, right?
Absolutely. And on the energy booster, we our current CEO of our organization, he says this is very well, which is more to do with you always want to experience folks who's been running the organization for years and years, decades and decades. So the value of that experience, the value of where the organization is coming from, you want to continue, but then you want to dive into those energy boosters, either by hiring third-party consultants or people who understand the topic, or bringing someone like me, bringing into the organization and booster to it. But
So what if you're pulled in by a kind of a mid-level team or management or whatever, but they're not really connected to the upper stream. The upper stream is just throwing stuff at them, and you have a difficult time persuading them. It's like, take a deep breath, let's push back a little bit, and let's get these teams going. Let's get this organization going. They don't have necessarily the support from the upper management. They don't really want you to engage with them. And then they themselves aren't really willing to give the details out. I'm sure you guys have probably experienced that over your lifetime.
Well, I have.
I mean, how do you, I've had this a couple of times, sometimes they're brilliant, other times it's just, what am I doing here? So how do you, what's the word? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, and I backed up a slide here because I think on your slow to fast scale, if done right, it has the potential to be almost logarithmic in its acceleration, where something like developing a heat map or business capabilities, that should be slow and methodical. And you are spending a lot of time digging out every possible shadow team and process and redundancy across every vertical and horizontal in your organization, and coding how effective or ineffective, profitable or unprofitable they are today. And that'll be slow and frustrating and obnoxious. But one concept, we don't have it in the deck per se, but one concept we return to in the book several times is this idea of a CXO. And the CXO is just that lodestone, that bowling ball in the bedsheet that is pulling everything toward the transformation effort. And it can be the CEO or the COO or the CFO or the CTO or CIO. But I think it's crucial to have that C in there, an executive at the highest level of the organization. The C could also stand for champion, for that matter, because without them, to your point, David, if there's a disconnect between the level that wants it and the level that's executing it, and never the twain shall meet, then you're going to be at 70% failure rate. So this book presupposes, by virtue of the fact that we pointed out that you do have a CXO level supporter, evangelist, that is throwing their weight, but not just their title. So actually, why don't we take us right into people, process, technology? Josh is one way you might pronounce that. So not the Western Josh, but Josh.
I do like the bowling ball analogy.
I haven't mocked up the bowling ball on the bed sheet yet, so you'll have to live with a bit more analog concept here on the page. But
and I can add to this, right? I mean, how we ended up at this, but so primarily I spent a lot of time in back home before joining to corporate America. Let me put it that way. I moved in 2016 to US, and I joined this company where I met Kader, who's my co-author now. But back home, the amount of technology changes were happening was pretty rapid, pretty fast. I'm primarily from UAE or Dubai, and things were happening very fast, very quick there. I joined in the United States, joined a bank, always been in the financial industry for a very long period of time. This is my first gig where I'm not in financial. And this organization was going through a rapid transformation. But I couldn't connect to, I see that disconnect between how the engineers or developers thought about transformation and how the top leadership was thinking. But it's a large corporation. People are doing their own stuff, projects, initiatives, etc. There was a time where Kader was appointed this transformation guy who was supposed to help. There were a few other colleagues, of course, but Kader was a voice. And on the floor, and I'm hoping Kader will join us anytime. He's a guy with charisma, right? So he was on the floor, and he was explaining this very passionately to a lot of people that this is how you do transformation, right? And that's where I thought in my mind as an engineer. Again, by heart I'm a coder. Thought that if I want to be successful in this organization, not only in this organization, if this organization wants to be successful, they're going to need someone who has a lot of passion when it comes to transformation. And he or she is not going to really care how others are thinking and what, right? They have this tunnel vision to just go for to achieve that North Star. And that's how I met him. I'm primarily not a very extrovert kind of a guy, so it took me some time to reach out to him because he was this figure who was just going fast, right? If stay with me, or you're just gonna be fall behind, and that's how we met. And when we were introducing this idea of JAWS. It's where this story was. I was sharing with Trevor and Kader and all of that, and I kind of helped understand a lot of other folks that you're gonna need that one individual, or you're gonna need that one idea, or you're gonna need that one thing which everyone is attached to, right? In my story, it was Kader. But that's how we introduced JAWS, and we do believe that people, technology, and processes is very mundane, very methodical to make it successful. But you're gonna need that energy booster constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the PPT, obviously, if you screw up any of those, the transformation won't work either. But
Absolutely.
what we think we backed into when Imran was telling that story, just as background for me about how he and Kader met, and we were still formulating the premise for the book and the outline of the content, it just struck me that this seems like a very plausible mechanism that people may not highlight when there's a successful transformation, but may have been the thing that held it together. And you could think of it as a gravity well, where even with the chaos swirling around it, there is a silent center, as it were, that's driving that in the direction you want to go. So you'll still get caught in the chaos, but you have almost this intentional or consistent approach to it. You have that one voice. And again, it could be the CXO. In this case, I don't think Kader was technically on the leadership team, but he had been empowered and appointed by the leadership team as the transformation guy. And he brought all of his gusto into the meetings he was a part of. And, David, he went to every level he needed to and convinced them one by one, if it was necessary, that, hey, without your data, this can't be successful. He made them feel integral to the success of the project and thus the company. And so, you don't want to, it's not a cult of personality thing. I think, to Imran's point, as he said, he's not an inherent extrovert, not by nature, but I think by nurture, he has certainly become, I'll say this, Imran, I feel like you have become that for, much of Cartus. If they haven't had those private or previous conversations with you necessarily, they wouldn't know that now. And so I think it can be learned as well, but it's crucial that it's identified by.
Does he wear a cape? Does Superman?
That I bet there's probably a picture out there of Kader in a cape. I know there's some of me, but we'll cover that at another presentation.
Thanks for the answer. How do you spell? How do you pronounce Josh in Hindi?
It's Josh.
Josh.
Yeah.
Josh.
You got it.
Yeah, and so as we kind of track back through our relative career histories, we did kind of pinpoint that Joe's type figure along the way when things were successful, and even seeing it now in process. I think that's pretty evident when you look at some of the call them the FANG companies, your Facebooks, Apples, et cetera. The person at the top, they're not just making the most money, they're often the biggest headline generator as well. And obviously that's not just resonating in the news cycle, but internally to their culture as well. So it's definitely something that we think with only the chaos, but without this strong Joe's element that's driving the kind of the baseline, the foundational people, process, and technology elements as well. And there's lots of good books about those that are a little bit more like a cookbook, but we have nothing against cookbooks. You get delicious meals out of them as well. So, we like to think we're a little bit of the art adding to the science that's already out there.
It's funny, I'm just looking it up and I got laugh, laughter, jibe, jest, hoax, and Josh.
There is a spectrum of formal definitions to it. The one you see on screen is the one that we thought applied most closely.
Yes.
But so we do have this this piece in the book about a very strategic use of silence as kind of this anti-chaos, where Kader had this technique where when he would join either an organization or an initiative, he would be asked, he would ask leadership to let him join random meetings. They weren't particular to his project. They could have been for any team or purpose in the company, but he would just sit in quietly on them. And of course, this was the day when we had meetings in person, right? So he would just be the new guy in the corner, might not say anything the whole meeting. And he might do this for weeks, just quietly observing, getting to know people. And what he was doing was making people ask the question, who is this guy? What is he doing? What is his function? Is this good news that he's here? Is it bad news? Should I be worried? So without saying a word, he was generating kind of this tension, this internal chaos that eventually you can't just keep doing that without a dangerous explosion. But eventually the tension would be strategically released with kind of the internal launch of however this transformation was being communicated. And that might pull in someone like me to actually put some of the words and pictures around it on the branding and marketing side internally before you ever get to the external side. So it has a lot of different elements that could be as simple as silence and as broad as the concept of entropy or the heat death of the universe, as Dave brought in.
Silence can be really loud, though.
True as well.
Yeah.
And so we're getting toward the top of the hour, I know. So luckily, this is our last official slide, but just this idea of, transformation, if you think of certain elements of it, say in nature, from worm to butterfly or whatever the transformation is, it's kind of a one and done when it happens. When the acorn transforms into an oak tree, it's an oak tree forever. And when you become the butterfly, you never go back in the cocoon and come out a caterpillar again. So the fact is that if this transformation is not cyclical, then you're kind of only postponing the inevitable. And this idea of Jose and chaos, these two kind of opposing but symmetrical forces, the fact is that they play on the original wetware, the software between our brains, in a way that, hardware and software, no matter how fast they evolve today, you're always going to get to someone 100 times faster with an emotional play than a logical one. And that's why the technology is not the primary point. The process is not the point for us. The subtitle of the book is Tales of Empowerment on the Path to Digital Transformation. And that's because it's the story that sells the concept and the power of Jose and chaos in the service of that story that drive it home to keep you on track to hitting your North Star. So you can either fight them or you can embrace them. You can bring in a bunch of brilliant coders to execute a technical strategy, but that's going to fall flat if you haven't also won the hearts and minds of the folks critical to making sure that you're successful at every tier of the organization and across the entire spectrum of stakeholders. Imran, any closing thoughts just on that idea of the ongoing nature of transformation versus one and done?
No, I think you said it well. I mean, I'll close it with one simple thing, and I think we all know that, and that is, transformation is hard. It's not. I don't think so. We have figured out a magic wand to transform ourselves. Any transformation, not only organizational, digital transformation, but even personal, individual transformation also is going to take a lot of work. So I would close it with, transformation is hard, and we are all learning. I think when we started, Jay said it in the beginning, learn every day. We are a student of transformation, and hopefully learn as we go forward.
So that kind of does it. The prepared remarks. I appreciated the questions along the way. It took us in directions we weren't expecting, and thus very much appreciated. Rather than diving into coding languages or process flows. So yeah, thanks to everyone who jumped in there.
Our meetup does attempt to provide its own level of chaos.
Especially with me around, right, Ron?
We all help, David.
Actually, I have a question, Trevor. You suggested that there's an end, but there's never an end, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, the opposite. Whereas the word transformation is perhaps not the most rigorous or literally applied one, because it's kind of a one-way street in biology, but in technology, it's definitely cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
So this is great. I would suggest to everyone, this is a great foray to complexity science and chaos. So I would suggest everyone to look up, Dave Stoughton and complexity science and other things to this notion that they're talking about, and especially how we deal with decision making and frameworks and how we do agile transformation, because we're dealing with human beings and people. People are complex entities in the universe, right? So whatever we think we're going to do, it's not going to happen like we think it's going to happen, right? And I think that's what they're articulating, right? And I think there's a lot of cool things that are happening right now in neuroscience. And so I work for Eli Lilly to do agile transformation, and I've been doing this for like 40 years. I hate to say that, so I sound old like Ron. So I really understand where you all are coming from and how you're approaching this and your experience. And I like the idea of chaos and chaos science and how you apply that in experimentation and the heat maps and everything that you articulated in your books to help companies look at where they're at from an operational point of view and where they at their current state, and then determine how they want to get to their target state, right? And then work through all that all the details, which will change all the time over the next 10 or 15 years, right? And that's why a lot of companies, a lot of people, executives I worked with, well, Jay, when is this done? When are we going to be done with is this transformation forever? When are we going to be done? What is the magic that we're going to achieve in 2023 or 2024? So have you all experienced that? How have you all responded to that?
I have responded sometime in a funny way, and sometime I have not responded to that question. And the funny way is to say, when you think that you don't want to make money, transformation is done. That's the day transformation is done. And sometimes I have not responded because it's a very rhetorical question. I think Trevor said it. It's cyclic. Human needs and human ask and human experiences changes as they grow. 20 years ago, what we used to use as a medium to even have this conversation is very different than what today is. So depending on the mood of the room, you answer or you decide not to answer.
The case study I like right now is, I think it's Tyson Foods, which literally kills billions of chickens a year in the service of feeding our meat-hungry population, is a primary investor in, I want to say, either Memphis Meats or Impossible Foods, which are creating either lab-grown or meat-free protein alternatives. And their whole thing is self-disruption. They know a good thing when they see it, and they're not going to let it beat them to the table, quite literally.
I have to say, in the last few weeks, they haven't been selling so good, those vegetarian, quote unquote, type of meats. For some reason, they've gone down, like, I don't know, something like 30%. Haven't got a clue why, but you know.
Well, I would say, unlike the fats in their protein, the market is saturated. And so with I think
you're gonna have to stick that in your book as well.
But that'll be the sequel, because this, for sure, when you only have 30,000 words to work with, it's a primer, nothing but. It's not unilateral or comprehensive, intentionally so, because there's a lot of room for individuals and individual corporations to apply their own spin on it.
I think it's important that we have to interject chaos.
Yes.
And that's what you're trying to say. At some point in time, what we do, operational stuff, I look at the operational side of the house or new development or whatever in a company, we have to interject chaos to see how people will do in the company, not only beyond that, but how can we create new and great things for the market, innovation, right? Chaos creates innovation. What do y'all think? A lot of times chaos is bad. A lot of people think chaos bad. Oh, we can't go into chaos, right? Well, what do you think? Do you think chaos is good or what?
I think it's an individual technique, probably, right? And I said it a little while ago also, that I personally see chaos more from a creative side of the world, right? There's a lot of pressure created around chaos, right? And because of that chaotic situation, somehow our human response to is that you need to solve it in a time period. So it forces you to take those kind of difficult decisions, right? If someone gives you a problem and say that, hey, you have whole lifetime to just solve one problem, you're gonna enjoy life a lot. Organizations, especially since we wrote this book more for organizations, you don't have a time. You have a competition doing something else while you are sitting on your lap and doing nothing, right? So I see chaos more from a creative empowerment side of the house. I don't see chaos as a bad thing. I see chaos, and Jay, I think you rightly said, it's the interjection, right? It's that you don't want to have a chaos all the time, all the 100 years of your organization. You want to create it. And even when we were designing a cover of our book, it took us some time, but that wasn't an idea. That there is a lot of chaos, but eventually it's going to come down where you will see that North Star, which we all talk about, right? Eventually, all those pieces are going to start coming and sitting in the right places. Who would see that is those leaders in the organization. They will see that, I know there's a lot of things going on, but I know exactly where we are going. Not exactly, but relatively exactly where we are going. But that's me.
Yeah, I think that point about the balance is key. There's a critical mass of chaos for every organization. That would be a sweet spot. And that's going to be different depending on how fragile or agile your organization is already. So for some, they will bend but not break. And when they snap back, it'll be impressive and achieve, a force multiplier on the results you were hoping for. And others, they will just flat out break because they couldn't absorb and redistribute and harness the chaos that was being thrown at them. So you do have to have a really light touch and know your particular organization really well to apply this without breaking people's spirits. You want them to feel the energy and that little bit of tension that accelerates and elevates performance, but doesn't drive it into the realm of unrelenting pressure or burnout or something like that.
Well said.
So we find ourselves doing software development in traditional enterprises, and software development is fundamentally chaotic. Enterprises are fundamentally, so I'm going to throw this out there and you can disagree with it. I think enterprises try to drive toward, no, we understand up front. Let's do waterfall. We understand up front everything we want to build, which has never been true in the history of software development. That's never been true, and yet there's this drive back to, no, we know everything up front, and let's drive out chaos. Whereas in fact, I mean, the Agile Manifesto starts out with a notion that we need to embrace change, and change is unpredictable. Therefore, change is chaos. Therefore, we need to embrace chaos in software development, and the struggle is between our embracing chaos and in the software development, which supports almost every enterprise these days, and the enterprises themselves, which do not want to hear about it.
Yeah.
So does that sound familiar?
It does, but I think as we are, this is a personal opinion, but as we are progressing in software development and in organization, understanding how engineers like to call it iterate, I think it's getting normalized more than it was, let's say 10 years back, right? 10 years back, telling someone that, I'm just going to try and test it and then show it to you, and then I'm going to add some more, was not there. Today, I think, call it buzzword, call it that is how others have successful, so I'm going to try to mimic it in those norms. I think it's getting a little more normal to kind of adopt agile versus 10 years back.
To follow on to that, Ron, I think the adoption or the effort to be safe is what's actually creating the chaos. So here I am, a manager, I don't want things to change because I feel safe. The problem is that safety place is the chaos itself. I've been in so many companies where I've how to deal with the operations. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You know, throw something out there, it turns out to be rubbish. And that's simply because people want to be safe. And to them, these safe rules are working for them, but in reality, they're creating the chaos themselves. Because that, as you said, rightly, you know, engineers or software developers, their stuff is going to change every minute, every time you put code in there. But if we have rules that make us, you know, form to something else, we're going to try our best to squeeze, you know, that code in there, and we're ultimately going to deliver the rubbish that we see that's out there. So I think it's coming from a safe place, or conceptually safe place on the business side, which creates the initial chaos. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Well, I definitely feel that as a function leader. I think, you know, I joined this organization that I'm still part of today 15 years ago as an entry-level proposal writer. And, you know, back then it was very easy to stay in your own silo and, you know, pretend that everyone had their lane and IT had its lane, and maybe they drop a new tool in your lap to help you do your job at some point along the way, and you'd learn it and implement it, etc. But you weren't part of the transformation. Your job was its own thing, and it was just going to be that way, and you knew where the river was flowing. And, you know, as I've risen higher in the organization and gotten further along in my career as well, and just seen the interconnectedness of successful companies, you know, if you don't have that full integration and you don't have those evangelists for the transformation at every level, starting at the top, but then working the feelers out like roots through the soil, then I think there's a, you know, a great deal of benefit. Like my little marketing team, for example, we're going through our own transformation, and I think many of the sub teams in our company would say the same thing, even if it's not of a digital variety per se, but they've just gotten more comfortable with what it, maybe they wouldn't articulate as chaos, but that is really what it is. You know, it rises, we figure out how to harness. It's still the same chaos, but to Imran's point, it became normalized. And so then we were able to ride it until the next chaos arose. And again, back to that cyclicality where, you know, everything new becomes old again, and then everything old becomes new again.
What you're saying is we're building new legacy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we'll use assembler again, but other than that.
I think that's concept, but I think we've learned something in the last 2 years with the pandemic. So what happened was chaos happened on a human scale across the globe. And people and companies have to come together to figure out how they were going to deal with the chaos. So Roche and J&J and others said, well, and FDA here in the United States said, how are we going to deal with the chaos? We have a pandemic, we have people dying. How are we going to get vaccines quickly through the trials and everything to get approved, to get them out into the human arms so that we can solve the pandemic? And that was a social epidemic chaos. And the human beings then reacted to that, and companies reacted to that, and they adjusted, and they accelerated and changed the processes, the procedures, and everything that we were accustomed to for years. And we said, we're going to change that. We're going to adapt to the chaos and make a difference and save lives. And this is why I think you all are talking about. It's about how people can come together and say, look, we don't have to do these 15 procedures or 255 procedures, and we don't have to go to the 3 trials, and we can change it up.
Gervais, do you think that was really people? Gervais,
Yes.
do you really think that was people, or it was something forced? I mean, it was forced
Well,
on
yeah,
everyone. No
it
one had a
was
choice on it, which is kind of nice.
absolutely forced. It was absolutely forced because people were dying.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
other
So it
people-
wasn't anybody's choice. It was desperation. And if we could
Yeah.
do the same, we could do
Yeah.
the same at these companies, create that desperation.
Yes.
Ooh, beautiful.
That's the point. That's the point
I
I'm trying
got
to
you
make.
now. Nice.
Every company, I don't care what the frickin' company you're doing. I don't care what product or service you're delivering. The point is that you got to figure out how to deliver your product and services to the market so you help people, whether it's saving their lives or whatever. It's about us. And I like the chaos by design. It's about us fighting through the chaos and making shit happen so that the world and people are better off.
Yeah.
And every time someone tells you, oh, you can't do that, oh, you have to do this, you have to, it's going to take 15 months to just, that's bullshit.
So,
Our
so
job
we know what
is
the
to figure
we know
out
what
how
the
to
name
make
of Jay's book will be, which is making
Yes.
shit happen.
You stole my joke, Ron.
Yeah, I do have a question for Imran and Trevor. So love the concept of Josh, right? We have been talking about, some form or the other for Josh, maybe a happiness factor, maybe a team morale, things like that. But you are expanding that, as my understanding goes, in terms of how you define it, to a much broader level, right? Just like in Hollywood, when a movie star has it or they don't have it, right? Similarly, a company and the people have Josh, they don't have Josh. Is there any way this is a two-part question. The first part is from my left brain. Is there any metric you're thinking of from a Josh perspective that we can measure objectively? And then the second part is, have you tried to associate that with some of the other things that people have talked about, the happiness factor and all those things? Jeff Sutherland talks about this happiness factor quite a bit. So those are the two questions I have for you guys.
I think you can creatively determine that during that benchmarking phase, whether it's a more formal business capabilities and heat map approach or a slightly more anecdotal collection. But their employee engagement metrics, I would say, are pretty crucial to that, and hopefully would be captured alongside profit and loss sheet data and technology burn rate and story points and all of the technical data. I think should be married against how your own employees are feeling internally about your company and your process. We go through a very deep dive every year on internal benchmarking surveys run by an external agency on behalf of our parent company, and the data it reveals is deep, and the trending year over year at both the company level and the individual team level is very actionable, because you can see clearly, oh, we're getting better at communicating changes. That's literally one of the questions. How do you feel changes are communicated? Or the adoption of technology, you can color it however you want. So I think you would have to know what you didn't know, though, Gopal, to that point. You just might not think of it until it's too late, and then you don't have the data that you would need for that. But I think it can be captured if you're creative and thoughtful at the start of the process.
I heard you begin to relate just to it sounded like charisma to Kader, but is it truly the leader person, that charismatic person, like Steve Jobs, or are we trying to create just throughout our organization?
I don't think so. Well, at least me, I don't associate Joe's only with a person or charisma of a person. I associate with a lot of other possibility, right? I mean, even if you give a reference of Steve Jobs, absolutely was a charismatic person, but then he definitely delivered some really cool products, right? The jaws for customer today, consumer, to attach to that brand is more to do with how good that product is and how easy that product is. And some of the new leaders throughout last decade, let's say, though they had their own charisma, they definitely provided a product which consumers and user of that product got very connected to. So JOS can be anything. It can be as simple as an idea which everyone gets attached to. What we are trying to create is that people need to get to attach to that transformation. They need to believe that we will be successful as an organization if we do that thing. Now, it can be led by a person, a charismatic person like Steve Jobs or Kader, or it can be led by just an idea that if we do it together, we'll be doing it. The other three pillars of technology, process, and people, don't get me wrong, it's not going to work if those three things is not there. Mm-hmm. But that acceleration which organization looks for, or Jay asked that, when are you done? That acceleration, for that you're going to need JOS in everyone, not in one person. Otherwise, around in our lifetime, we have seen that within an organization there's this one individual who really wants to do a lot of things, but if not everyone is sold to it, it's just going to sound like, okay, he's an enthusiastic person, that's all.
Imran, if you taking Jobs as an example, if he didn't have the bully side of him, do you think he would be just as successful? Yeah, he has charisma, but I never hear a good thing about him when it comes to actually, developing new ideas are great, charisma is great, but basically a big bully. So if you don't have the bully, how do you suppose he would have succeeded?
I think his lead designer, Johnny Ives, is on the record as saying Steve succeeded despite his bullying tendencies, not because of them, and that he thankfully had all these other things working for him as well, from his art and design background that led him to incorporate different fonts in the first Macintoshes, and of course his vision for computers that fit in your pocket and onward. So I think.
So what you were saying is his talent, let's say, outweighs his behavior, let's say.
But David, you can go back to your own question of people are worried about because they're safe, right? Sometimes, don't get me wrong, I absolutely agree with you. Steve was known as a bully kind of a guy, right? But sometimes you misinterpret the enthusiasm, the I know this is going to work in the bully side of the house, because you want to be a safe person. You want to make sure that everything I do is going to work. And this person who's constantly telling you, no, dude, you are not right. This is what we're going to do. So it's a little bit of interpretation. Transformation definitely means accelerated fail fast, right? Yeah. And accelerated fail fast, it's on a border of bullying, right? I mean, you're gonna, if you are working on a 2-week sprint, you really want to put a product end of 2 weeks, which and again, being a coder, other person can see and test and see it. 2 weeks is a very short period of time.
Nah. Give it a week, give it a day.
Right. So
I would suggest not to confuse the CEO of a company and their personality and dynamics of Benioff and Musk and others with teams and their leaders.
Right.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
That do not compare. It's like apples and nuts. Totally different.
Unless you have a nut allergy.
And I think we touch very briefly in the book on just this idea of, regardless of how successful your CXO appointment might be, without those champions and connectors, that it's partly their job to then identify and recruit to their cause, to the North Star, so that at every level there is a voice echoing in a relatable way, not just this top-down way. So you have to start at the top, but you very quickly have to get down to the grassroots as well, so that it does integrate at every level, because yeah, then you have a single point of failure if it's just this one voice and title driving everything and you never get past that.
Yeah, but do not, I repeat, do not underestimate the powers at the top. So what Mark Benioff says, or like what others say in companies that are very powerful and influential, can make a difference. So just keep that in mind. It's politics. You have to play the politics really, really well.
Well, then, politically speaking, we very much appreciate everyone's time and enthusiasm today. So this has been a real treat to get to nerd out on this with you guys for a while.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanna thank.
Hey, Jay,
Yes, go ahead.
we have a raffle we need to do as well.
Oh,
Oh,
raffle time.
Yeah, if you want to stop the recording, we can do the raffle. And
hey, there's
Mary,
only 8 of us. You might as well just hand them all out.
I could be convinced.
I'm convinced too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Mary has a random, a wheel to pick the raffle as well. So Mary, if you want to share, please go ahead.
All right. There you go. Okay, I only have 4 people in here now, but we can spin.
You know, 4?
Oh,
Well, I didn't count the people that are hosting, so
So it is almost hand out one to everybody.
And I think we will do that, absolutely. I don't really see the point of raffle, so yeah, let us know.
got one right off the bat. So
Yeah, you want a digital copy or the actual physical and
physical.
yeah.
That's beautiful. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Jay or Mary or Gopal or whoever, just capture everyone's, if they want a Kindle copy, capture their email. If they want a physical copy, capture their snail mail address, and we're happy to send either.
Thank you.
thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys.
So we'll do the Kindle one just to save the carbon footprint, right? If that's
Sure.
okay with everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
As long as
and
no one boycotts Amazon, there might be some boycotters out there.
It sounds like you're boycotting Apple. What's going on there? I was just searching for it on Apple, like, this guy's up there.
So if I may ask people to put in their email address in the chat window, please, so that we can communicate with you.
Yeah,
Gopal.
Florida wash away, so it's all good.
Gopal, I think Smita said she is preferring paper copy. Did you say, Smita?
Yes.
So at least, Gopal, I was wondering, I mean, we should ask the authors if one copy could be sent in paper.
Thank you.
We are absolutely fine.
More than one, but our bookshelves cannot handle the weight of our copies, believe us.
How many pages was it again?
It's small, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
120, 130.
Yeah, you can just shrink it down further. That would save the tree.
Well, I know there were some folks that dropped off at the top of the hour as well. And, I don't know what the expectation is, but Imran, I think will agree. We're happy to, if you know their name. Please.
Yeah, especially digital Kindle version. Absolutely. We are comfortable. Yeah.
So we all win. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it
for
was
coming.
awesome.
It was wonderful. Yeah,
Great,
it was
great
wonderful.
session.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Stay in
Nice
touch.
to meet you. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Oh, wait, the last time I won a book was Ron's book.
Yeah, it's too long. You can't read it.
See you guys. Bye.